Hi everyone, and welcome back to another episode of LogisticsSales.com. My name is Dean, and I'll be your host, and joining me as always are my co-hosts, Damon and Gail.
Hello.
Today we're diving deep into the topic of understanding your ideal client. So whether you're a seasoned professional or just starting out on your journey in sales, grasping the nuances of your ideal client can make all the difference in your sales efforts. So get ready to gain some more valuable insights and actionable strategies as we explore the concept of understanding your ideal client both inside and out. Welcome back, everyone. Let's jump in. So, as I said, today's lesson is going to be about understanding your ideal client. We're going to be exploring some important concepts and discuss some actionable strategies of what is involved in understanding your ideal client. So to get things started, Damon, what is understanding your ideal client and the importance of it? What does that mean to you?
Understanding your ideal client is just knowing that you need to figure out who to go after when you go after your sales, right? So basic context is make sure you understand like who you're actually marketing to or who you're selling to. That product or service or whichever business you decide to go into, who's your clients? And understanding that person is important, right? So you want to figure out, like, am I actually going to solve a problem for that person? Am I actually going to figure out what their needs and wants are, and how do I build that trust with that client? So understanding who they are and what their potential problems may be and how I can help them. That's essentially all we want to find out.
Yeah, I mean, myself as well. I think Damon did a really good job of kind of recapping exactly what understanding your ideal client's all about. But I think it comes down to just an understanding of what it is that your criteria is for going after customers, right? Like, for example, if you sell lawnmowers, you're probably not going to go after somebody who lives in a condo. So figuring out exactly what it is that you sell and then who fits the criteria of wanting that product or service.
That just takes us back into like alignment. So if we understand what we have to offer, then we can find out, okay, well, who's interested in that, whose problem and need do we solve there? What that allows us to do is starts allowing us to target our marketing, right? So if we understand like the behavior, who the people are, maybe the demographics of them, where do they live, what do they do, what are they looking for, and if we understand what their wants and needs are in that matter, we're able to start directing our marketing towards them to build that trust and build that relationship with that client. Marketing becomes important because we don't want to overspend on targeting the wrong clients. So if we know who our target client is, now we know, okay, where can we find them? How can we directly market to them so we're not wasting a lot of our time and energy and especially resources when it comes to landing these clients? Once we're able to target our marketing accordingly and we can target it specifically to their wants and needs as well, now we could actually get more conversions because we're not, again, wasting a lot of time and energy on the wrong stuff. And how do you focus your time and energy on the right stuff? And so just doing a little bit of that research in the beginning goes a long ways to helping you convert those clients at the end as well.
Yeah, and I think a lot of that is going to fall into the next topic that we're going to go over here, which is defining your ideal client. And I think we kind of missed it at the beginning of this episode here, but there is a worksheet as well if you guys want to print that off and follow along or just work through it as we go through it. But you really need to understand when you're defining your ideal client, it's just like who's going to benefit most from the service or the product that you offer, whether that's a specific demographic or a location that you're looking to service, or specific pain point. Maybe you fill a gap in somebody's need. So it's figuring out what those services are that you have and then that alignment towards the customer. For example, we do a lot with transportation and logistics. So for reefer services, refrigerated transportation, you would want to go after people who particularly need reefer services. So going after someone who sells ice cream or meat products or anything along those lines, like fruit, produce, things like that are typically going to need temperature control is an ideal customer for you to go after. But if you specialize in refrigerated service, maybe going after, lumber may not be your ideal customer because it doesn't quite fit that service need. So having that understanding kind of gives you the ability to get laser focused when you're targeting your ideal customer.
Yeah. So and again, today we're talking about understanding your ideal customer and what that means. And it's really going after the customer that you want to work with. And in order to do that, you have to be capable of, tailoring the services that you offer to meet their needs. And really, it's important to understand your customer's behavior. We get into a few things in order to understand them, and one of them is the behavior patterns. And in order to do that, you want to be able to analyze the data, go in and actually do some research, and you'll find out some of the behaviors that they have, like their peak seasons, preferred delivery times, or the order frequency is really important.
Yeah, so I think it's important to understand, you don't want to talk to a customer too long when they're in their peak season. So if they're seasonal and they're having these high peak demands where they're extremely busy, they're very limited for time. So they're not going to really have as much time to spend with you. But if you understand that they have seasonality along with their product or service, then you understand that, hey, a slower time might be a better time for them for me to get my message across to them. They have more time available to themselves. And then I can address if I understand their need, I know that they're going to be heading into a busy season. I can use that as a pain point of that customer to actually provide solutions for them.
Great point, Damon. With that, there's factors that influence customer decisions. And in logistics, for example, you want to know what those decisions are. With some of the customers that we deal with, we all know that price, reliability, speed of delivery, and the level of customer service is really important.
I think that there are some really good, talking about understanding your customer's decision and why they buy is very important. Kind of keeping to that example of refrigerated service. If, for example, you're going after produce companies, you need to understand when is a good time to contact them and what's important to them, whether it's, being able to track the temperature in those trailers, because produce is one of those things that if there's temperature fluctuations, it could cause things like spoilage or quality control issues. So understanding what's important for the customer and what's the reason that they buy. Like, what is going to be that deciding factor for them to make a decision or to make a change in their current operations? And understanding those are key and absolutely paramount if you want to get your foot in the door.
And I think all of that brings us to our third point, is using this behavior data to understand our ideal client. And once you have that information, you use that to your advantage. That's going to help you build that bridge and connect with that client. And a good example is if you're dealing with an ideal client that values fast deliveries. One of the things that we've done in our other line of work is specializing in expedited deliveries. So if you know your client is valuing that service, they want something to get there fast, and you can go up to them and offer them that service, that expedited deliveries, and it gets there as quick as they want, you're actually going to be addressing that pain point, and it'll give them something to go back and think about, saying, well, yeah, you know what, they have exactly what I want, and I want to work with them.
Yeah, I was actually talking to somebody yesterday about perishables as well as expedited deliveries. And the problem that they were having was the customer in Japan was advertising that they could get the freshest apples, Canadian apples, to show up in Japan for delivery for their clients, to get that apple onto the plate within 48 hours. So they had this challenge of saying, okay, hey, if you can get us these apples here within this allotted time frame, we'll buy as many as you can give us. And so, they worked together with the growers and suppliers of the apples here in British Columbia, and they were able to work with getting these things flown over to Japan in that time frame to actually meet the requirement, and making sure, again, quality obviously had to be, refrigerated product and having that there. But, it's also understanding like the client's needs. So the producer may be making the apples or maybe shipping the apples, but then there's also requirements of the customer that they're trying to sell to. And so understanding both of them and working together to provide that solution becomes vitally important.
Yeah, and I think produce is actually a very good example for us to kind of help explain it to you guys here today, because produce is one that we all know has a shelf life. When you pick up produce and you bring it home to your house and you stick it on the counter, how long is it really going to last before it is no longer good? So it shows like how when customers have specific needs, for example, time, and duration for how long it needs to get there, and speed of delivery, understanding why that's important is just as crucial as delivering on your promises as well. Because if you can have those, informed conversations of understanding, hey, I understand the shipment needs to get here, from A to B in this amount of time because of the quality of the product. It really does show you as a professional, and it brings out that ability to have those informed conversations so that you can really start to sell your services.
Yeah, you absolutely want to be able to anticipate your customers' needs. And once you understand their behaviors, you'll be able to understand their needs. And once you can leverage the behavior data that you're gathering, you're going to be able to be competitive and separate yourself in the market and deliver on what you're offering. And that brings us into our unique selling proposition.
Thanks, Dean. Unique selling proposition, otherwise also known as USP. And what this basically is a fancy term for understanding what your strength of the product that you're selling or the service that you're offering, what is the actual strength of that product and how do I get it into the marketplace? And once you know what that key element that you have that makes you different from your competitors, now it gives you a competitive advantage in the marketplace to be able to get your product out there and for people to resonate with it very quickly. So knowing what that is helps you with your marketing. And your marketing becomes very important because now you can start closing the time it takes for you to land customers and convert those customers. So there's 3 circles here in this graph that help you identify what your unique selling proposition is, your USP. So the 3 circles are passion, market needs, and strength. So starting with passion, you want to see what really drives you, what really gets you going in your business. What's the reason that you're attracted to selling the service or product that you're selling or offering is? Once you figure out what that passion is, now start relating it to the market needs. How does it relate to the market? What are people looking for? What pain points am I solving? And then also looking at the strength. So strength is just basically saying, okay, well, what do we do better than the rest of the people that are in our market? Or what do we want our customers to know about us? And so that could also be a strength too. When it comes to selling, I know in our industry, I typically have multiple USPs depending on the type of client I'm going after. So if I know, for example, if it's a refrigerated client, I'm highlighting my refrigerated service, the quality control aspect of what we offer, and the speed of delivery. So just knowing that these are certain pain points that somebody that is having this type of product delivered to them I'll be trying to highlight those USPs to make ourselves and differentiate ourselves from our competition. But if I'm selling, for example, our dry van service, and we're use a simple one like lumber again, I'm probably not going to be pitching temperature control service or even speed, right? I mean, sometimes when it comes to lumber, they're looking for low cost. And they're saying, okay, they could probably sit in the trailer for 5 days. They can sit in the trailer for longer, and its speed is sometimes not the biggest issue because the cost of getting that product there in the cheapest possible way is sometimes a priority. So then now we're maybe more price focused versus service focused.
I think it's important. We're talking again today about understanding your ideal client. And, Damon, we're going through unique selling propositions, and you're hearing all of this. Just understand when we're going after that ideal client, it's who do I want to work with? And a USP is really what do they need that I can deliver. And that's why we've talked about behavior patterns and doing the research and putting in the work. Because if you're doing the work and you know what they want, you were saying you have multiple USPs depending on who the customer is. You just want to set it up so it's targeted to what their needs are and address them. So as you're hearing all these different terms, a lot of them are probably new to you for the first time. You may not have heard what a unique selling proposition was until today's lesson. And just remember, it's that one thing that they need. And I love the Apple example because they needed these apples to get there absolutely, at the quickest. And it may have even been something they've never done before. But if they were able to create part of a business that was going to address that need, and we'll get it there overnight, and it's got to be arrive in good condition, and as long as it addressed that need, you're both feet through the door.
Yeah, and I think that's exactly it. They came and said, hey, this is what we want. This is the need that we currently need a solution for. And it's if you're that solution provider, there's your USP right there. So you need, quick service, you need quality control. We got that, and then you just have to sell it. And I think a lot of that comes down to, at the end of the day, is what passion you can put forward into how you sell it. because, depending on what market you're in, some are more competitive than others. Sometimes your USP is something that a lot of other carriers or other people in your industry may be very similar to you. So at the end of the day, I think that deciding factor on what's going to push you above your competitors is going to be your passion for it. Do you understand your industry or your niche? Do you have, the answers? Do you have that willingness to be enthusiastic and to learn and to build those relationships?
And large corporations and brands do this really well. Like with Amazon. Amazon is all about fast and free delivery on eligible orders. And their client base is known for wanting that service. They understood their clients really well, and they said, okay, what do our consumers want? They want everything as quick as possible. When you think about having something really quick for delivery to your place, it's like Amazon seems to be that place now with Amazon Prime. And then there's different corporations like Nike, which kind of go after the athletes, and it's all about just do it. And so they have their slogans as well, but their slogans are catered towards that clientele as well. And what do they want that client to feel and embody when they think of their brand? And so that's a USP that some of these major corporations use to target their ideal clients.
Yeah, and I think going back to Amazon, they're like a very good example of their USP is sign up for Prime and you get next day or same day service, which is like, really great. Like today, I bought some new pillowcases off of Amazon Prime this morning. I could have gone to Walmart and picked one up, but for me, the convenience of being able to just, quickly go into the application and just hit, click and know that they're going to be there when I get home from work this afternoon is so convenient. So for me, that USP was a very easy sell. So finding what your own unique USP is for whatever service or business that you're selling is really critical for being able to get those quick sales.
Yeah, it's the role of exceptional customer service, which is, I know something, Gail, you really excel at. I'm looking forward to this next topic. It's something that has to do with the success of not just the relationship, but future business with that ideal client.
Yeah. So, at the end of the day, once you've figured out who your ideal client is, it comes down to how do you engage with that ideal client? How do you build yourself above the rest of your competitors and stand out above the crowd? And a lot of that comes into a couple different points here, but the first one is personalized communication. How do you go about kind of understanding your customer, doing the research onto what's important to them, what are they looking for out of a service provider, and then being able to tailor your approach so that when you approach them, they go, oh, okay, this person knows what they're talking about. They understand the needs that I have for my business, so that you stand out right from the get-go.
And that's true. It's all about standing out in the industry. And that's what's going to actually, these skills, I hope you're listening really well, but these are the skills that are going to make you really valuable to any employer that you're working for or even doing your own business. These are the skills that when you start really honing in and understanding those clients and what their needs are, and even what their consumers' needs are beyond that, this is going to give you a step up in any job application that you go into, job interview that you go into, any employment place that you walk into, and you try to help them develop their company or services offerings. But there's so many value points that, if you are able to just kind of hone in on these skills, man, it's off to the races.
Yeah. And then above, those personalized communications that are directly correlated with your unique selling proposition, you also want to have different strategies for proactive outreach. How are you communicating with them between your sales conversations? Because that's really important. Most people don't want to be just sold. They want to actually build relationships. And one really easy way of doing that is by making things not all about the sale. Right? So you have that USP, or hey, this is what we have for you. This is what we're offering. This is why we think it will benefit you. And then maybe your next communication is, hey, just wanted to check in. How was your weekend? It was a long weekend. Wanted to see if you did anything fun. Just something as simple as that can really be a differentiator between you and the competitor who's selling the exact same service that you offer.
Yeah, Gail, you do this really well, and it's not always about the business. So sometimes when you're having the conversations, I've seen you during a conversation learn other information about the ideal client or customer now as the relationship is building, and it's them offering information about an upcoming graduation or a day off because they're going on an anniversary, they're going out for dinner and spending the weekend away with their loved one. And when you take that information, remember, every time you're talking to your ideal client, your customer, it's an opportunity to learn more about them. So like Gail was saying, it's not just about the business. It's the opportunity to learn and gather more information. So the next time you want to do another message, you send something out to them, or you send even a text message just to say, hey, happy anniversary, because you've remembered from the conversation before that there's something else other than the business. And then they start to put two and two together that, wow, this person really cares. And that's another way of separating you from the other guy.
I think everyone's looking for appreciation too, and being valued. If the customer sees that coming from you, it genuinely warms their heart up, and it helps really build that genuine relationship. Everyone talks about authenticity. It's one of the highest vibrations that we could be in, and that's why people resonate to that so much. But it's if you do that, genuinely from, just having that in your mind, in the back of your mind, that I want to build a relationship. I'm not just going after a strictly transaction. That's the basis for a solid foundation.
Yeah. And that was our point number 3 here, which is building relationships. And I think, unless you want to be a transactional partner, you have to build those relationships, because that's where you're going to build out longevity. That's where you've gone the extra step to really make it personal, where you have that personal connection between the person on the other end of the phone or the email or the table maybe. And you can have those connections where they're not going to go anywhere, because they're like, Dean's my guy. He's the one I'm always going to call when I need some help with, in our case, transportation and logistics, but depending on whatever it is you sell, you want to be that guy, that person that they're always going to go to. And that really does come down to what kind of relationship can you build? And then that leads me into the point number 4 here, which is providing exceptional service. So once you've built that relationship, you've established that trust, that's when you're typically going to be able to make your sale. Once you've made that sale, now it's how do you deliver on it? You have to be able to take all of those promises that you've laid out in your USP and now make sure that you actually achieve them, right? So making sure that the foundation is in place to meet the deliverables that you put out for yourself in the beginning.
Those are for those people that like operations that are watching. Some of the jobs that we talk about start off in sales, but then delivering the service part is more of an operational aspect of these things too. So if you like sales or operations, you're in for a treat.
Yeah. Well, and like going back to the Amazon example as well, if Amazon, their promise for next day delivery, if they weren't always delivering on that promise, would they still be in business like they are today? Probably not. It's all about how you deliver on the promises that you make. You have to follow through on them. Which leads me into point number 5, which is seek feedback and then being able to act on it. Once you've built those relationships and you've delivered on the service, a lot of the times those customers become like your biggest fans. They're advocates for you, saying, hey, these guys over here, they know what they're doing. They are knowledgeable. They're professional. They really, value the relationship that they have with me. And then they almost act as a referral partner.
It opens up more doors. I mean, so many times I've worked with a client, and if you've only worked with them on, let's say, one aspect of their business, there's so many different aspects that they don't even know about our business and we don't know about their business. But when you have that proactive approach of, let me seek feedback, let me see where else I can help this client, let me see how they were with the current services that we offered. And maybe that's an opportunity to expand on the conversations. But so many times, beyond even referrals, you could even get so much more business with that same client.
Yeah, just by the conversations, you could be doing something like in our line of work, if you're doing domestic work and it's across Canada, coming out of where we are located in British Columbia, and you're talking to them and you're doing the job you're supposed to be doing, delivering on your unique selling proposition and addressing that pain point, and all of a sudden they go, oh, if only you guys were down in California. And you're like, well, actually that's a significant part of our business. Like, really? And then next thing you know, you're doing a bunch of other work from the United States back into Canada, which was not initially what the first part of the relationship even started off as.
Yeah, and outside the operational aspect as well, are you asking for feedback specifically on how you're doing in your partnership? A lot of the times, there are things that you don't even realize that you're doing that are so valuable to a customer. So asking for their feedback could be something that you could use for future sales down the line. If they say, oh, I just absolutely love the way that you're always available for me 24/7, and every time I call, you're always picking up the phone. Maybe that's something that you can use when you're selling to another customer down the line, where they're like, I just have a hard time getting a hold of my carriers. It's always something that's so difficult for me. And you'd be like, what? I have a proven track record of being able to be available for my customers. And I have a perfect, if there's someone you want to talk to, I'm sure they would be happy to kind of give a referral as well. But you don't know you have that opportunity until you ask for it.
I think what that actually does too is actually people need to realize that you as an individual, regardless of which company you're working in, or if you're doing it for yourself, you yourself become the brand. And you yourself, when you start having those conversations with your clients and you start figuring out like, hey, I'm a little bit different from everybody else. Like, for example, like the example that you gave was, if I pick up my phone 24/7 and I'm always delivering the service and I'm always getting that feedback from my clients that, hey, you know what, Gail, you're doing this really well. That's an idea for you to have your own unique selling proposition. It may be not the same one that your company offers, but it may be something that you offer because you are your own brand nowadays.
And I think it's important to also bring up when you're talking to your ideal client and you're asking those questions, it's okay to get the feedback that if you're falling short somewhere, and to get that feedback, because if you don't know, you're not able to bring your best foot forward. And if you take that information and you change it to address, another maybe need or want they have, it'll help you not only with that customer, but with future customers like you were talking about.
It's actually definitely a bit of a trick of the trade is being able to ask your customer, what am I doing that may not be meeting up to your expectations? Because if they have nothing to say, that's awesome. You're doing great. You know you're on the right track. But if they say, hey, you could be doing this a little bit better, immediately you have feedback to go and work on your own development and being able to make it better so that the next customer that maybe that would be the deciding factor for them not to buy, you now know that that's an area you need to work on and you can develop. And I think, being able to reflect on things that maybe we do need to work on is very important because we're human. None of us are perfect. We do need to develop every single day.
And we talk about those two simple questions. What am I doing right? What can I improve on? That's how you get that feedback. Just two simple questions to ask.
And I guarantee you that there are not a lot of people out there that actually ask. People don't want to know what they're doing wrong. So it's a great way to stand out, against your competitors to be like, hey, how can I improve? Because a lot of people aren't even asking that question. So definitely recommend that for everybody, which is going to bring us into our last point here, which is maintaining constant communication. So how are you continuing the conversation once you've made the sale? And it's a mistake that we do see a lot of times when it comes to new sales reps of, they put in all this work of building that relationship and getting it going until the sale lands. And then it's radio silence. And typically, when it's radio silence, all of a sudden that relationship that you spent all that time and energy building, it almost becomes disingenuine because they're like, okay, I thought we had a relationship, we built something here, and then you just disappeared as soon as I gave you what you want. We don't want to be that kind of person. You don't want to be that kind of salesperson. You want to be that person that after you've built the sale, they know that they can always turn to you. They can call, Dean up and be like, hey, Dean, how's it going? I've got this going on. What are you doing? Same thing and vice versa.
That goes back into like being proactive, and this is kind of an advanced sales tip as well, is like you don't want to have to rebuild that customer again from scratch. If you're able to maintain that communication with that customer, they know you're always there. And the biggest mistake that we see is when people forget about that client, they don't want to talk to you anymore. Because they're like, hey, you know what? Was it just transactional? Do you only call me when you need something? Or are you going to maintain that consistent communication with me?
Yeah. And of course, your dynamic may change. Maybe once you've landed the customer, you don't need to talk to them every single day, or they don't want to talk to you every single day. But you have to kind of assess them on like a case-by-case basis and find out what does that customer value. Right? If they want to be talking to you every day, call them every day. If they're like, hey, let's just do like a monthly recap or a check-in, then do that. But you want to be very flexible with the way that you continue to maintain that conversation with the mindset of don't let it fall off. Because what happens when it falls off is the next person that comes around and is able to build a relationship with them. What's the likelihood that they're going to say, oh, I was working with Gail, but she hasn't called me in like 3 months. So, maybe I'm going to still work with her. Probably not. They're going to want to work with the person who wants that relationship. So make sure you maintain them and make sure you keep them consistent and strong throughout the duration of your relationship.
Yeah, it's funny you just brought that point out. I was just going to mention the consistency, because if you do fall off and the other sales representative comes in and is consistent, who are they going to turn to? They're going to turn to the person most fresh in their mind. So obviously, you can see there is a lot of different factors that go into understanding your ideal client. And we hope you enjoyed the show today. And we look forward to seeing you next time. Until then, take care and see you soon.